Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I will be bringing you part 1 of my July wrap up. So I am splitting my July wrap up into 2 parts just because normally I do a mid-month wrap up in the middle of the month. However, by the time we were at the middle of July, I had only read 4 books, so it didn't feel like it was worth doing a wrap up. However, by the time we got to the end of the month, I had completed 11 books. You guys know that I do like to go on a bit. I give you pretty in-depth reviews, both regarding the synopsis of the book and also my personal thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like. So I thought it would be better to split my wrap up into 2 parts and make 2 shorter videos instead of one enormous one that will make both you and I want to rip their hair out. So this is obviously part 1, and in this video I will be sharing with you my reading statistics for the month of July as well as my reviews for the first 5 books that I read in the month. I did participate in I think just 2 readathons in July. The first one was obviously the Book Junkie trials, which I co-hosted, and then the second one was the Reading Rush. I do have an entire playlist with my TBR and reading vlogs for the Reading Rush, which I will link up here, but if I can remember when I'm going through my wrap up, I will share with you which prompts I used each book for their respective readathons. So jumping straight in with my statistics, in the month of July I read a total of 3,460 pages, which breaks down to an average of 111.6 pages per day. For my ratings, we had 1 2-star, 3 3-stars, 5 4-stars and 2 5-stars. Now this breaks down to an average of a 3.72 average rating, which I do believe is quite low for me. I do give a lot of books 5 stars. As you can see, I didn't have many 5-star reads this month, which was interesting. For the demographics, I read 8 adult books and 3 young adults. For the formats, we had 7 physical books, 2 audio books, 1 graphic novel and 1 manga. For the genres, I read 5 fantasy, 3 science fiction, 1 thriller, 1 paranormal romance and 1 mystery. And now for the places where I sourced all of these books. 4 of them came from my own TBR that existed before the start of 2019. 3 books I read last month I have hauled in 2019. 3 of the books I read were library books and 1 was a travelling book. So as you can see, I had a pretty decent reading month. All of those figures are pretty average for me aside from the ratings. I did feel very slumpy during the month and I felt like I wasn't reading a lot, and it turns out that I was. I just don't think I was particularly loving anything that I was reading. If you guys have seen my August Bookopoly video as well, you will know that I am taking a little bit of a break in August. I am not holding myself to all of these things that I normally hold myself to, and I think I was definitely feeling the pressure in July, which was definitely affecting my stress levels and my mood, and I think that that was maybe reflected in my ratings. I feel like I was a very grumpy reviewer in July. But without further ado, let's get into the reviews. So the first book that I read in the month of July was Confessions by Kane Minato. This is a travelling book that I have started with a group of bookish friends. As soon as I have finished filming this wrap up, I am going to be packing this up and sending it off to the next person in our travelling book group. But this is a translated mystery thriller that follows a whole range of different perspectives. I'm not going to give you too much on the synopsis of this because one of the things that people say about this is that it is really fucked up, and it is kind of fucked up, and I think most of the enjoyment that I got from this came from figuring out who the next perspective would be and what the motives were and being shocked at the plot twist. So I will pretty much just give you the bare bones of the plot, and that is that we have a school teacher. I think she teaches middle school. I think all of the children are around 13. Her daughter died a few months ago and she is about to retire from her post as teacher. Now on her last day, she decides to tell her students the story of her daughter's death, and this story goes off on many tangents, all of which kind of do prove relevant, which I did really enjoy about this. But she goes through all of these tangents and finally hits the nail on the head that the reason that she's telling this story is because 2 students in her class were responsible for the death of her daughter, and she wants to exact her own revenge essentially. This book then goes through multiple different perspectives and their take on what happened, the event of the daughter's death, and then the actions of the teacher's revenge kind of situation. We have about 5 perspectives in all. Some of them are students, some are parents of students, some are teachers, but the central plot of this story does revolve around the death of the teacher's little girl. Now there are some things that I did like about this. I liked that I never really knew where this book was going. I liked that most of the plot twists did take me by surprise. There was one that I guessed, but when it came to the reveal, even though I had guessed the main point of the reveal, I hadn't guessed how it had happened, so that one still shocked me. So if you want want a shocking book where you can't really guess the plot twist, then I would probably recommend this one. I did give this 3 stars because there are a couple of things that I didn't love about it. One of the things that I didn't love is how repetitive it is. As I said, the plot of this book does center around the death of the little girl. So in almost every perspective, we got a retelling from that person's perspective of what happened at the exact time that the little girl died and the last encounter and how she died, etc. But it was word for word, so you would get a different character's thoughts and feelings on what was happening, but the dialogue of what the little girl said to somebody else and what they said to her was exact in every single perspective. So aspects like that did get a little bit repetitive because obviously I knew how the little girl had died because by the end of the book I'd already read it 3 or 4 times. The other thing that I didn't particularly love about this is that the children in the story did not particularly feel like children. As I said, they are all around age 13, and at some points they definitely were behaving like adults or much older children. There were a couple of points where a character would say something like, I didn't believe what this adult had said to me, so I was going to go and find some chemicals that I had lying around so I could conduct some tests for myself. We also have a character who has a laboratory in an abandoned house and he's like 13. So the children didn't feel like children and a lot of the story was very repetitive. But other than that, I did really enjoy this. It's very fast paced. It is definitely compelling. And as I said, I would recommend it if you like shocking books. And for the Book Junkie Trials, this fulfilled the prompt for Oak Grove to read a book that was gritty or gruesome. My second book of the month was Children of the Whales Volume 3 by Abby Umeda. This was also on my Book Junkie Trials TBR to read a book for Old Pirate Road, and that is to read a book that is at least in some part set on the sea. So Children of the Whales is a manga series that follows a 14-year-old boy named Jikoro, who is the archivist on the Mud Whale, which is an island that floats along on the Sea of Sand. The inhabitants of the Mud Whale are very isolated from the rest of civilization. They have never met anybody from the rest of civilization. They know that there are other people out there, but they know absolutely nothing about them. At one point in this series, one of the characters is shocked that there is more than one country. Chakuro is always wanting to seek some new knowledge, so he kind of dedicates himself to recording everything that happens on the Mud Whale so that generations to come will know more than the current generation does. One day they float past another island and they decide to go and scout it for supplies, and while they are there they find the first human they have ever encountered that isn't from the Mud Whale, and this kicks off a whole chain of events. So I have been really enjoying this manga series. I gave this particular installment 4 stars. The first half to 3/4 of this particular installment I felt was building up to something, but it was very much a slow burn, and we would cut to all of the different kind of groups of characters. Like in this world we have people who can wield magic and people who can't, so we'd cut to like the security groups and how they are preparing, and then there's like a band of misfits and how they're preparing, and then how the magic wielders are being trained and things like that. And then it was only the last section of this book where the actual conflict that they were building up to started to happen. As usual with these volumes though, they did end on a pretty big cliffhanger, and I am excited to see how this continues. I really want to know where the rest of this series is going to be going, because I feel like this particular conflict in this location, like the isolated location that they are currently in, can only really go on for so long. So I really want to see where they will be going after that. Obviously I'll have to read some more volumes for that. However, one of my absolutely lovely subscribers, Victoria, did send me a package with volumes 6, 7 and 8 in, so I have quite a few more to be going on with now, and I do hope to read those soon. I then read my favourite book of the month, which was Illuminate by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I pretty much dedicated a vlog to this. It was accidental, but that week I was posting a short vlog and most of it was just my reactions to Illuminate. For the Book Junkie Trials, this fulfilled the prompt for Glimmer to read a beautiful or colourful book, and it also fulfilled my mage weakness, which was to read a book outside of my comfort zone. So I know a lot of you guys are probably already familiar with the Illuminate files. It is extremely popular. It's one of those series that's like BookTube's darlings. I was a little bit trepidatious about it as this is the first young adult book that I've read from J. Kristoff, and I have previously never read anything by Amy Kaufman. I thought that the mixed media aspects would make it really fun and quick to read, but this is like surprisingly not a quick read, and I just wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. I was pretty sure I was going to love it, but at the same time I was terrified that I wouldn't. So if you are unfamiliar, the Illuminate files follows 2 teenagers in space who have just broken up when this evil corporation comes to attack their planet. Most of the civilians are evacuated onto these 3 ships, a warship, a cargo ship, and a science research vessel, I think. And our 2 main characters, Katie and Ezra, are both evacuated, but they are evacuated onto different ships. In the attack, the corporation did compromise the warship and its ability to jump through space. So instead of these 3 ships being able to quickly jump to civilization, they have to go the long route and kind of manually fly there, and this is going to take them several months. However, as 2 of the ships in the survivors fleet are not really equipped for battle and the military warship has been a little bit damaged, they cannot move very fast, and the ship that attacked the planet is following them at a faster speed than the survivors fleet can currently move. That is pretty much all I want to say about this, because I went into this pretty much blind, because nobody ever says anything about this apart from that it is told all in mixed media, and I was honestly so shocked. I love this so much. It had aspects that I did not anticipate. I did both read this physically and listen to the audiobook at the same time. I would definitely recommend doing that, because I think that the audiobook gives a lot of dimension to the text, but then the audiobook does also skip out a few of the intricate graphic nuances of the text, so I would definitely recommend doing both of them together. I don't think that I would have enjoyed this story as much if I had just done one or the other, and I'm definitely glad that I took your guys' advice and combined the 2 experiences. So there are some horror aspects in this that I did not anticipate, and a lot of you guys seem to be really confused when I said that, and I'm not sure if it is just because I listened to the audiobook and read the text at the same time, but the way that the audiobook builds up tension with music and sound effects, because it is a full cast audio, combined with the ways that some of the pages in the book are formatted, it was really creepy, and there were things that happened that I wasn't expecting to happen, and I was like, whoa, where has this come from? Because going into this I thought it was going to be like a sci-fi, like space cadet kind of story, and it is definitely not. There are slight horror aspects. I'm not going to say that there are full-on horror aspects, but if you listen to the audiobook you will get a few horror aspects in this. It is very sinister. This story builds a lot of tension. There are pages in here that are counting down to things, so every few pages you'll get a countdown that says like 10 hours until this happens, and then a few pages later it'll be like 8 hours until this happens. Later on in the book those countdowns still exist, but they change to something else, and I just found it to be really effective in building tension. I am really excited to read Gemina. Gemina is on my August Bookopoly and Notes TBR, and I'm going to be listening to the audiobook and reading it physically again whilst I'm on the plane to and from Rome, so I'm definitely excited to get started with that. I am a little bit sad that I do have to wait until I'm going to Rome before I can start, but I do think that will be the best way for me to make the most of the time that I will be spending flying. So I'm definitely excited to continue on with this series, and this is one of my favourite books of the year so far. I then read The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg. This was the book that was featured in the July Shelflove Crate. Shelflove Crate did kindly sponsor a video revolving around this book where I unboxed their July book and did a full reading vlog dedicated to this book, so I will link that up here if you haven't seen it, because a lot of my thoughts and feelings are in there, and they will also be a little bit more in depth than I'm going to share with you today. So The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg is a brand new young adult sci-fi release that is set in a theme park called The Kingdom, which is very much like Disneyland. So this story is set in the future, so a lot of the technology present in this book we don't have today, but it felt very much like what Disney World may be like in the future. Most of us know there is a dark side to Disney. They are a company after all. They make money based on emotional manipulation and also children, because they make children's movies, and a lot of people do consider Disney to be evil, and this kind of felt like a critique on that, on the dark side of Disney, and that scared me a little bit. So the main plot line of this book is that we follow a fantasist, and a fantasist is essentially a robot Disney princess. So she has been manufactured in a factory. She's kind of a blend of human and robot, so I don't want to say she's a robot and I don't want to say that she's a cyborg, but she has been genetically crafted as this fuse of natural human tissue and robot part to essentially fulfill the role of a Disney princess in this park, The Kingdom. So she does things like meet and greets, parades, they do like afternoon teas and things like that, and all her life she's thought that it's really great to be a fantasist. She loves her job, she gets to hang out with her sisters, which are the other fantasists, and she loves what they do there. This park are also introducing previously extinct species every single month, so they will genetically create a polar bear, for example, the same way that the fantasists are created, and our main character really loves this about the park, and she loves interacting with the animals. However, one day a boy called Owen shows up as a maintenance worker, and it turns out that he kind of opens her eyes to the problems that are in this park, like that the animals aren't behaving like animals should behave. We also have a few instances in the history of this world where fantasists have gone missing or they've misbehaved misbehaved and they've been destroyed. I will give a trigger warning in this for animal abuse. It is something that I definitely did not expect going into this. I am very sensitive to things like that, but it did not really upset me. But it is on page and it does happen more than once. There are more than one instances of animal abuse in here. And I will also give a trigger warning for sexual abuse. That is definitely not on page. It is very much alluded to in here, so there are never any sexually violent scenes depicted on the page, but there is a theme and an undertone of sexual abuse and sexual violence in this book, so be wary of that if you are triggered by those themes. This book also has mixed media aspects. It is told in a mix of mixed media and normal text. This book does also follow two timelines, so right at the beginning we find out that somebody has been killed and that Anna is being blamed for it. So we follow the present day timeline where there is a trial investigating the murder of this person, and then we also follow a timeline that starts 2 years previous to present day and leads up to this crime that Anna supposedly committed. So I did give this book 3 stars, and my issue with it, I don't really have an issue. This is like a classic 3-star rating. I did not particularly dislike anything about this, but I did not particularly love it either. In the dust jacket for this, it says that it takes place in this fantastical theme park where guests can go on virtual dragon rides and things like this, and I just don't feel like enough of that was depicted on the page. Like, I really wanted just like 3 chapters of gratuitous exploration of this fantastic park just to get all of that fun world building in here, whereas this very much focuses on our main character, what she's doing in her day-to-day life and things like that. And I definitely wanted to see a lot more of the world because I think that is one of the most unique and exciting things about this book. But that being said, I didn't really dislike anything about it. I just didn't love it either. The writing style is standard, the plot is fine. It's a little bit tropey, it's a little bit predictable, but it's nothing crazily offensive. And I do know that a lot of people have enjoyed this book and a lot of people are really excited to read it. So I don't think it's a bad book at all. It just didn't really resonate or impact me in any way. And then the final book that we're going to be talking about in this video, which is the 5th book that I read in July, is Storm of Swords Part 2, Blood and Gold by George R.R. Martin. This is the second half of the 3rd installment in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. I did read this for the book Junkie trials for the prompt Draconic Isle, which was to read a book that featured dragons. I'm sure you guys all know that A Song of Ice and Fire does indeed feature dragons. I have done a 2.5, I think, hour live show on this with the Catch Up Book Club, so I will link that up here if you would like to go and check that out. And that live show does cover both halves of Storm of Swords. I'm not going to go into the plot of this too much because when you try to explain the plot of A Song of Ice and Fire, you never actually hit the nail on the head because there's so much going on. But I did give this 5 stars. I really enjoyed the 3rd installment in this series as a whole. It is my favourite book in the series so far. It was very action-packed. Most of the main events of the entire series so far, I think, if the show is as true to the books as I believe it is, do happen in the 3rd installment. So there was a lot of shocking moments. It is a little bit questionable, and I'm sure he's done it for a reason because George R.R. Martin is a genius, but it is a little bit questionable that Clash of Kings was so slow and drawn out and Storm of Swords is so action-packed. It's like the pacing is off because Clash of Kings was so slow-paced and this is so fast-paced. It's like, why couldn't you spread out these big events? But overall, I did very much enjoy Storm of Swords. Like I said, so many big events happened. It's hard not to enjoy it because there's something new happening pretty much every page. There are also quite a few Easter eggs that are in here that we don't get in the show or that allude to reveals that will be coming later on, especially things that Old Nan says, because Old Nan, I'm still convinced, is the only person in this world who actually knows what's going on. I'm a little bit trepidatious to move on to A Feast for Crows after this one, just because so much did happen in this one. I'm not sure what's going to happen in A Feast for Crows, but I will be picking that up early September and the live show will be mid to late September, so I guess I'll find out how I feel about that sometime soon. But Storm of Swords was definitely my favourite book in the series so far. 5 stars, really enjoyed it. So those are all the books for the first half of my July wrap up. This is going to be really long-winded, which is why I decided to split my wrap up into 2 parts. I'm glad that I did because just before filming I did start second guessing myself and thought that I should maybe just do it all as one. But I'm very glad that I made the decision to split it down because this one's already long. But that is about it from me today. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Please also don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head to my description box, you'll find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.